Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. First, I just want to mention that this is Philanthropy Week here at Illinois State University. You'll see from my background that Birds Give Back is happening. That will be tomorrow, and it's a one-day fundraiser. And here in the Office of International Studies and Programs, we are raising funds for international student scholarships. So if you wonder why the background, that's why. So thank you all for joining us. My name is Linda Bolivar, and I am the Program Coordinator in International House and Special Programs here at Illinois State University. I work with Matt Schwab, who could not be here today. On behalf of the Office of International Studies and Programs, I would like to formally welcome you all to the fourth session of our Spring 2022 International Seminar Series titled ISU International Engagement. This series is one of many programs developed by our office to assist in comprehensive campus internationalization and emphasize the benefits of social, cultural, and linguistic knowledge beyond what is represented in our home countries. This semester, the series is focused on the wide variety of internationalization efforts taking place on the Illinois State University campus. This semester, all events are available as Zoom webinars. As an attendee, you can submit questions through the webinar Q&A function, and we will relay those to the presenter and panelists at the end of the session. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce today's speaker, my colleague, Alex Ratcliff-Hanger, Associate Director for Study Abroad in the Office of International Studies. Hi, Alex. Alex is no stranger to study abroad. While earning her BA from Miami University in American and United States Studies and Civilization, Alex spent a semester abroad in Florence, Italy. After completing her degree, she spent a year teaching English in China. In 2011, she joined the ISU Office of International Studies and Programs as a study abroad advisor. In 2018, she completed her master's degree in communication here at ISU and was promoted to study abroad coordinator. In August 2019, she moved into her current role as Associate Director for Education Abroad or Study Abroad. Alex will be facilitating a panel of students who will share their perspectives on study abroad. So Alex, I'll hand it over to you so you can introduce the panelists. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Linda. So thank you all for joining us today. It is my pleasure to be leading this panel. Before we officially introduce our panelists, I would like to take one moment to discuss the different types of programs. Because our three students that will be joining us and talking about their experiences did have very different experiences. So you should be able to see a screen and it should have explore your options on it. The first type of program that we have is called Direct Enroll. A Direct Enroll program is kind of exactly what it sounds like. So you are directly enrolling in a host institution or a partner institution. While you're at that host institution, you are taking classes. You are fully immersed in that host institution. You are living in student housing. You get a questionable ID picture, all of that. For a direct enroll program, you can go for a semester or a summer. As you can see, a semester, you're there for a normal period of time, about 3 or 4 months. You're taking about 3, 4, 5 classes while you're there, as opposed to summer, where you're taking 1 or 2 classes and you're there for maybe a month for that program. Again, still very similar experiences, just a shorter duration. The other type of program that we have is called a faculty-led program. A faculty-led program also sounds exactly what it is. So you'll have an ISU faculty member here from ISU on campus take a group of students abroad for their program. So that program can be between 10 days and 6 weeks, but they usually average 2 to 4 weeks. And you're usually getting 1 or 2 classes during that time period. Now, the cool thing about faculty-led programs or short-term programs is that they're more hands-on. So they are usually more specific to a major or a minor, so a general subject area. They're hands-on, they have more group experiences, group outing, excursions that are included with their program. And there's just a cooler way to be able to tangibly connect the subject matter with those hands-on experiences. So I will pause there. I will stop sharing that screen. and I will gladly introduce our panelists. So today we'll be having 3 panelists joining us. One of them apologize, my screen was acting oddly. So I will let them introduce themselves. However, we do have 3. So we'll have Joy Strickland, Devon Fine, and Anna Tulley joining us. So if we want to start alphabetically, Devon, if you want to turn on your video and introduce yourself.
Yep. So hello, my name is Devon Fine, and then I am a political science major at ISU with minors in philosophy and peace and conflict resolution. And then I went to Cyprus at the University of Nicosia last semester, which was fall 2021.
Sure. Thank you. Next up, we have Joy Strickland. If you want to turn on your video and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Joy Strickland. I'm a accounting and international business major with a minor in Spanish, and I'm studying in Paderborn, Germany for the fall and spring semesters of this year.
Perfect. And last but not least, Anna Tulley, if you want to turn on your video and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Anna. My pronouns are she, her, and I am majoring in history and anthropology with minors in Spanish and Latin American studies. And so I've gone abroad a couple of times. The first was a faculty-led program in the summer of 2019 with history and art faculty in Orvieto, Italy. And then in the spring of 2020, the infamous spring of 2020, I studied abroad in Spain, in southern Spain, in Granada. And I will actually be, if everything goes well, going abroad again this summer back to Italy, central Italy, with the same faculty to do an archaeological excavation there.
Awesome. Thank you all. I'm very excited. We do feel like this is a nice selection of students and just a varying degree of their experience, as we have direct enroll, a couple of different direct enroll programs, but we also have faculty-led short-term programs as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start, and whoever wants to answer first can go ahead and answer. But why? Why did you decide that you wanted to study abroad? Any takers?
I'll go ahead. So for me, I'm from Bloomington Normal, and having been raised here, I was really hoping to sort of create this sense of independence that I felt like I might be lacking. And so I went abroad, just this sounds so cliche, but to sort of find that other part of myself. And then also to just get a greater understanding of how other people live on the other side of the world. It's just, it really impacts who you are as a person, both as like a scholar and then just as a decent human being.
Who's up?
I can go. So I always knew I was going to study abroad. My degree, I really wanted to do international politics. So basically the way to make that happen at ISU was to go abroad and spend some time overseas. And then I had previously studied abroad. I was an exchange student in high school in Germany. And so I knew as soon as I went into college that I was going to go back at some point.
I love to learn, and I'm really interested in other cultures. So this was a great way to mix those. And then also the international business program, which is one of my majors, they have a dual degree option where you can study abroad and get an additional bachelor's. And I thought that was awesome and wanted to try that out.
Very cool. And so how did you choose your program? So like Devon, you mentioned that you had done a previous exchange program in Germany, but you didn't end up studying in Germany. So what factors led to you choosing your program?
Yeah, so I mean, I love Germany so much, but I knew I had to go somewhere else. And I also wanted a very, very different experience. I wanted it to be as different as possible so that I could learn the most from it. So like I had to get out of Western Europe. And then I actually went to Cyprus because I had never heard of it before I chose to go there. And then also once I started learning more about like the classes I could take there, and also like it's in Europe, it's in the European Union, but geographically it's in Asia. It's like a divided island. It's like in the Middle East. So I was like, it was familiar enough to where I felt safe, but like different enough to where I knew that I would just have the most possible to learn from that experience by going to Cyprus specifically.
And so did you learn about Cyprus from coming into the study abroad office, or did you learn about it through other means while you were on campus?
Well, we talked about, because Cyprus has a peacekeeping mission. So whenever I took my United Nations class, we like briefly talked about the mission there. But whenever I was looking at programs, I actually started with what classes fit with my minor. And so I started there, and then the Cyprus program just like fit everything I was looking for.
Very nice. And Joy, would you like to pop in? So I think the question was, how did you choose your program?
Yeah. So I had two options with going with the dual degree program for international business. I could go to Germany or France. And I talked to Dr. Ribbons, who is over the international business program, and we compared the options, and Germany was the one that sounded best fit for me. And I also heard a lot of really good reviews from students that had gone there in the past.
Very nice. Anna, how did you choose multiple programs? You had to start someplace, right?
Sure. So for Italy, I heard about it through the history department, since it was a faculty-led trip. And it was something that just really piqued my interest. And I knew at that point that I wanted to go abroad for a semester somewhere. So this 4-week trip really was a great way to sort of dip my toe into the water of studying abroad. And as far as Spain goes, I was looking to study abroad someplace in a language immersive environment. So that would either be Spain or somewhere in Central or South America. I also wanted to have as many travel opportunities as I possibly could. And so Spain made the most sense logistically. And in addition, there was a wide variety of people going abroad to Spain. I think in my program, 20 ISU students went abroad that semester. It's great to have just that hometown community while you're in this completely unfamiliar place.
Thank you. Well, and so you all briefly touched on it, but I'd like to talk about academics. So yes, you chose locations because they were cool and that they had awesome opportunities for you. But Joy, would you mind talking a little bit about what type of classes are you taking? Are they all business? Are you taking any German language classes?
That's been one of the really cool parts of this opportunity is some of the flexibility. So the good thing about this program, and if you'll notice, I am a huge advocate for this. So if you're listening and thinking about studying abroad, please do it. But a lot of the classes are similar to what I take at ISU, so it won't delay my graduation date at all. But a little bit that's even more of a pro is there's some flexibility. So for example, one of the classes I'll get to take in the coming semester is economics of healthcare. Healthcare systems. And that's something that I hadn't thought much about as an option at ISU because I'm not an econ major, but because I get to take an IB elective there, I was open to choose some of the things that interest me to a little bit, like that are a little different from my degree. And I also have gotten the chance to take some German language courses as well.
How's that going for you?
The German courses are a little difficult for me.
Which is quite all right. I think it probably just gives you a nice foundation that you feel a little bit more comfortable while you're there.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, learning the language in context is completely different. So I'll say the good thing about going abroad too, we get to interact with other exchange students. So there are lots of students there from Spain, from France, from Italy. So I've really gotten a chance to improve my Spanish. And so there are a lot of language learning opportunities abroad.
Cool. Devon, do you want to talk about what types of classes you ended up taking? How do they apply to, I believe you said your minor that you were focusing on?
Yeah, so I will say I specifically waited until my senior year to study abroad, just because A, I didn't want to have to worry about rent my senior year, but B, I didn't want to have to worry about meeting specific class requirements that I needed from, so I finished all of my major and minor requirements before I went. And so if I didn't get a specific class, it wouldn't mess me up for graduation. So I took a conflict analysis class. Like I said, I'm a peace and conflict minor, so we just talked about different wars, and it was actually with a professor who teaches their diplomacy stuff, and also like has worked in Europe for a long time as like a security advisor, basically. So I did that. I did a history class with a bunch of other European study abroad students, and then I took two language classes. I took German and Italian. German
Cool.
because I already speak the language, and then Italian, I just like whatever. It's close to Spanish, and that'd be useful. And then I actually did an independent study with a professor back at ISU as well. So in addition to my classes in Cyprus, I also did some research on the peacekeeping mission in Cyprus, and that was a very good opportunity to like actually learn more about the situation in Cyprus. So I mean, highly recommend if you're going abroad to at least do some sort of project to like force yourself to get out into the community and learn more from the people on wherever you're at.
And so did your host institution assist you with, as you're saying, getting out into the community and engaging more, or were those independent ventures that you were doing?
A little bit of both. So I did like a photo project. So a lot of it was just going out to different places and taking pictures, which was good. But I had a lot of conversations about like so it's divided between like a Greek side and a Turkish side, and I was on the Greek side. But I didn't really have a lot of interactions with the Turkish Cypriots at first. But I realized that the locals weren't actually always willing to talk about the division. It was kind of a taboo topic for them. So I actually used my professors because they were more willing to open up about their experiences.
Mhm.
So I was able to kind of crack that project that way, like through my professors, because the locals, I mean, they obviously a lot of people obviously don't want to talk about like I don't know the bad things in their society all the time. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's an ongoing stressor, if you will.
yeah,
Gotcha.
exactly.
Well, Anna, I don't know which program you're going to focus more so on because you have done two different ones. But so you did mention that you're a Spanish minor, I believe. Yeah. And so if you want to talk about Spain versus what kind of activities you did with your summer program in Italy, because both of them were super interesting and hands-on in their own ways.
Sure, yeah. I'll start with Spain. Because I went to finish my minor, all of my classes were in Spanish. So I went through a program associated with ISU that has connections to the University of Granada. And I did a few weeks of intensive language training. And so that was with mostly just ISU students, a couple students from other universities. But that was just this period where we were brushing up on all of our skills and sort of just getting us ready for life in Spain.
Yeah.
It was incredibly helpful. And then after that, I took a few classes, like elective sort of classes. One was in Spanish art, which art history is one of my hobbies, side hobbies. So it was really cool to get to learn about that in Spanish. And then I also took a literature class, a grammar, and a speaking and writing class. And all of my classes were really interesting. The professors, since this is an international branch of this university, they know exactly how to work with international students, which Spanish is not their first language in many cases. So that was just a fascinating experience in general. I loved going to class, and it's really different from class in the United States. As far as Italy goes, I think I enrolled in 2 classes. One of those was just like the study abroad credit, and another was Italian history. And so part of the program was traveling around Italy going to various museums, art museums, archaeological sites, just really experiencing the culture. And so we only had class maybe 4 times a week for 2 to 3 hours in the morning. And the rest was experiential learning, which really opened my eyes up to these different ways in which you can learn that are outside of the classroom.
Mhm.
You definitely don't need a classroom to, understand the history or the culture of a place.
I think it's one of the really cool things about study abroad that not only is it combining the actual learning of that history or that subject or the people, whatever it might be, but then you actually go see it. And so I think that's a really cool component of study abroad, that yes, you're learning about it, but as soon as you learn about it, you get to go experience it and see it and, interact with it on a different level. That's really cool. I think, yeah, being able to do an art history program and actually go and see all the art history that you're learning about in person as opposed to a slideshow is, I think I would remember that a little bit more. So I want to jump around a little bit because I realize that COVID is still a thing. We're still in the midst of everything. How has COVID impacted your experience? So Joy, if you wouldn't mind starting us off, you are still currently abroad and in your program. How has COVID impacted your program, if at all?
Well, the thing is, it hasn't so much for me, I'll say. Actually, it has. Sorry. It has. Pretty much to get anywhere in Germany, especially right now. So I'm actually home for the month of February. But right around December, things tightened back up because COVID rates were getting high again. And so if you were going to any place that was non-essential, so basically if it wasn't a grocery store, you would have to show, there's a little QR code on your phone that you have where you register your vaccination. And so if you don't have that with you, you can't get into the store if you don't have some kind of proof of vaccination. And then even when January came around, it got a little bit tighter. So at that point, you had to have either a vaccination and a negative test, or you had to be boosted. So they call it 2G plus because it translates over into German with words that start with G. Don't ask me how to say them. But yes, so COVID tightened things up. And then our classes were in person in the beginning of the semester last year. Once December hit, they moved online, and it's expected that we'll be in person again this semester. But you do also have to use that COVID vaccination proof to get into the campus. And then sometimes they even do random checks when you're in your classroom or when you're about to enter. They want to see an ID in your COVID certificate.
And so Anna, you briefly touched on it, but you were actually abroad during spring of 2020. You did mention that you started your program, and then did you end up returning from your program during that time?
I did, yes. It was a very eventful mid-March for me.
So the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah, if you guys can remember back to, January, February of March 2020 or of 2020, there's like this buzz of this, virus going around in China and then in Italy, and then Italy's closing its borders. Oh no. All of a sudden, the borders were closing everywhere. There's this almost like a hysteria of people panicking. Will we be going back? Will we be riding it out here? There were so many unknowns at that time. Like looking back at it, it was a really tricky situation, and I'm lucky that it turned out the way it did. But we were originally notified that we had the choice whether to stay or to go. But shortly after, like within a few days after that, ISU made the call that we had to return home. And so it was just really a scramble trying to get back to the US. And then everything, like what happened here, everything was just paused for a couple of weeks while we had to figure out the logistics of how to host classes when you have, a 7-hour time difference. So it was a rough situation, but ultimately I think everybody made the best they could of it. So I still did all of my assignments online. They threw together this online platform, and it was amazing. I'm really grateful for all my professors for being so understanding of the situation as well. And then as for this upcoming Italy trip, it was actually supposed to happen. You know, I was supposed to go on it 2 summers ago, right after my Spain trip, and we pushed it off to last summer, or until last summer.
Yeah.
And things just weren't in good shape then either, so we pushed it off one more time, and so that's why I crossed my fingers at the beginning, because I'm really hoping that it actually ends up happening. But if there's one thing we've learned about this pandemic, it's that you have to be adaptable and flexible, and be willing to just, go with the flow with your situation. A lot of these things are beyond your control. And I think that's probably the number one lesson I learned while studying abroad.
You actually segued nicely to that. I was going to say one of the factors, or some of the factors that our students say they learn or feel like they come away from their experience with is flexibility, adaptability, confidence. You're always entering into unique situations and engaging with people that you've never necessarily engaged with before. And so it just kind of you're able to roll with things a little bit more. So unfortunately, you definitely tested those skills while you were abroad. Devon, I know you were abroad for fall I believe fall 21 was the first time that we allowed students to study abroad again. We put a pause on things for a little bit. Did COVID impact your semester abroad at all?
Yeah, I had a very similar experience to Joy, as like we needed our COVID card to get into classes, to get into the grocery store, like literally to get everywhere. The biggest way I would say it impacted my experience goes along with being really open-minded was I actually used COVID restrictions to decide where I was going to go on like weekend travels. So like basically when I was like, oh, where should I go for the weekend? I looked at like what was open, where I could fly to, where I wouldn't have to quarantine. So I did a lot of travel outside of Cyprus too, while I was abroad. And honestly, but also I don't know, Joy, if you have this similar experience, but I felt safer there than I do in the States, just because there was everyone was still going about their life, but you trusted that everyone was vaccinated. If you were in a grocery store, people were wearing masks and yeah, so I felt safer, and I also used it to my advantage, to be honest.
Nice. So we're going to pivot slightly. We did talk about your experiences with your program, how you chose your program, the academics of it, so how it's kind of tying into either your plan of study or your major or minor. How do you think this experience will help you in your professional career? Who wants to start? I don't know who I started with last time. I feel like Devon, since you were just talking, you want to continue talking?
Yeah, I can start. I also have
we also have a very interesting story right now, too.
Yeah. So I did study abroad last semester. I'm actually currently living in Sarajevo in Bosnia-Herzegovina, which if you're an American, the way you know this city is it's where the Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated on the bridge, and it triggered World War I. So I'm living there right now. It's very interesting. So yeah, but I actually I'm doing an internship here. And I found that experience. I was doing a paper, like a whole semester long project in paper in my conflict class in Cyprus on the conflict in Bosnia. And I just got really interested in it. And so my professor was like, oh, I urge you to go. And I was going to try to do my internship in Brussels, Belgium this spring, but I applied to a bunch and nothing really came to fruition. And since I got really interested in this conflict, again, I was open-minded, and I was like, oh, what are some organizations in Bosnia that I can do my internship at? And so this one worked out, and I'm very happy it did. So I ended up in another country through my experience in Cyprus, and it's directly tied to, it's a post-conflict research center, so it's directly tied to conflict and peace.
Oh.
And
so did you find that internship on your own, or was that a connection that you kind of made throughout your professors that you had in Cyprus?
Kind of both. I found the actual organization by myself, but I would not have looked at that had my professor not given me guidance on the project. And I don't know, B like actually said like, oh, if you want to do that, you should, because that would be a good opportunity for you. Like he really challenged me to be more open-minded, I guess, about it. And then also like I would have never ever thought to look in Sarajevo on my own had I not done that project.
Well, and I think the cool thing, the feedback that we've had from students that have studied in Cyprus before is that because you are in more Eastern Europe,
Hmm.
slash on the verge of Asia, that you just tend to do things that are a little bit more on the eastern side of Europe. So
Yeah.
just more
Well, not only
travel.
that, but it's like they call it a strategic location, which I had never really thought of before, but it's like it's literally it's in the European Union, it's on Asia, and then it's like a stone throw away from Africa. So really you have like all of these options available to you. And I don't know, it's like a hidden gem, I swear.
I mean, we also think so. That's why we have the program. But I'm
Yeah.
glad that you also felt like it was a positive experience for you. I'm going to pop over to Anna. So I am super interested to hear how all of your different study abroad experiences are going to translate for you after college. Do you have any insight for us?
Yeah, so I'll start with like as far as academics go,
Okay.
experiences go. I had my first experience with archaeology this in the summer program, the summer after my freshman year, and I did that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could do this for the rest of my life.
Was it kind of like a,
It was, yeah, it was an epiphany. I was like, oh, what am I doing? So that was really great, you know. And Spanish has also been an interest in mine. I took it all throughout high school. And as you know, knowing another language or even just being conversational in it really makes you more marketable, and it allows you to communicate with like this whole other population. I think that's something that this world needs more of, is just open communication. And so that was my goal as far as learning Spanish goes. Um, but overall, I would say it's like these soft skills that I learned from being abroad that will be most applicable to my future career. Just learning how to be adaptable, like Devin emphasized, being open-minded about where you're going next, making connections with people, and also I used to be very bad at this, but once I came back, I think I was a little bit better. Is just asking for help when you need it, because being in a new country, you know, even if you have people on your side that are there to talk to you, it's still a really scary experience at first. And so asking for help will make your life a lot easier. And I think again, it's a way to build community. And that's essentially what study abroad taught me.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy to hear that. And I think, as you're saying, flexibility, adaptability, intercultural communication, thinking outside the box. You know, I think the other thing, Devin, you didn't have to do a visa for your program, but I think Anna and Joy, you probably had to do either a visa or residence permit for your program locations. I also just think going through that process teaches you how to follow directions and to ask questions and to really just figure out where to find information, if you will. And yeah, and as you're saying, asking questions. I think the thing that I also learned from my study abroad was how to read public transportation. So each location that I went to, I would figure out whatever the public transportation was, figure out how to read a map, how to figure out the public transportation. And that also involved talking to people, asking questions and making sure that I was in the right place. We can talk about Pompeii later. I was not in the right place. Spoiler alert. So I do want to get into a little bit more of the fun stuff. What is something that surprised you about your program or your country or just your overall experience? I don't want to make you have to choose a specific area. And Joy, did I have you answer the last? I didn't have you answer that. Joy, please take it away with how is your program going to connect with your career? I sincerely apologize.
No
I'm
worries.
very excited.
I really think Anna hit the nail on the head, especially when talking about marketability. I mean, learning a language in context, kind of as I said earlier, that's an untouchable experience. When it comes to being adaptable, for example, the housing that I live in Germany is an apartment complex arranged through the university, the Paderborn University, and it's a community specifically for exchange students. So for example, my roommates are from 3 separate countries, Iran, Tunisia, and Togo, none of which is, English is not their first language. I mean, one speaks Persian, one speaks French, and one speaks Arabic. So when we are, coming up with rules for the house or how we coexist and things like that, creating a comfortable environment, you have no choice but to be adaptable and to be patient as well. My patience and my communication skills have significantly grown because I am either communicating with people who are not native English speakers, or I'm communicating in another language, which means I'm, trying to use whatever words I may have or really trying to get my point across. So I think there's nothing that compares to study abroad.
Well, and so you mentioned that your program in particular, you'll get a dual degree out of it. So you'll get a bachelor's degree from ISU, and then once you complete that, you'll also receive your bachelor's degree from Paderborn as well. And so with your IB major, what is your focus area within IB?
I believe it's accounting, because it was really close to the accounting major. So yes, it's accounting.
Yeah, a lot of overlap with that.
And the other good part is one of the things that I'm required to do as a Paderborn student, which is common for, I think, other schools in European countries as well. But we have to write a bachelor's thesis, which I'm actually really excited about. It gives me a chance to research something that I'm interested in. Like Devon said, completing a project abroad gives you that extra investment, that extra accountability. And then that's something that I can use. Right now, I'm thinking I'll go to grad school. Actually, I'm certain. So that'll be a supplement to my application. But if you decide to go into the professional world, that's an amazing resume builder as well.
Very nice. Well, I apologize for starting to move on to the next question. So let's go ahead and do that. What is something that surprised you about your program, your country, or your just overall study abroad experience? And Joy, do you want to continue since we were just talking?
Sure thing. One of the things that I was surprised about was how easy it is to travel and how many opportunities that can create. For example, it costs $13 US dollars the other day. I bought a flight from Vienna, Austria back to Paderborn. And I was $13. What? So we take lots of weekend trips, my friends and I, when we're abroad, just to go to Italy or Spain, for example. And because that's so easy, I can learn new things. So for example, I decided to stay abroad for Christmas, and I ended up going with my friend to her family's house in Spain. And there I ended up trying new foods, lots of new foods, but one in particular, they brought out a dish called langostinos, which are like large shrimps that still have the face and the shell and the feet and everything. And so that was really a challenge for me to try and remain respectful and not be freaked out and, respect their culture, because that's a very traditional thing to eat, langostinos. So it's really easy to travel, and that leads to some awesome experiences.
Devon, you want to take it away? What is something that has surprised you?
So whenever I went to Cyprus, I didn't expect to really get immersed so much in the culture, because I don't speak Greek. You're there only for a few months, but there were so many things about Cypriot culture that really stuck with me that I felt really changed me. And so I felt by the end, I really did get immersed in the experience, but not in the ways that you think, by learning the language and stuff, but in the ways of sitting at dinner for 3 or 4 hours at a time and just finding something to talk about with your friends and having really deep conversations, sitting at the coffee shops all day, going to the beach. But Cyprus specifically, I mean, they run on island time, so it's really impossible to be stressed out. But I realized I was really taken aback by that really exposed America from abroad, I think, of just like our productivity standards, how they're so fast. And not that that's a bad thing all the time, but like life was just so enjoyable over there. And I saw that from abroad. And that really surprised me, which I wasn't prepared for at first.
Interesting. I had not thought of that. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought of that, but not in terms of like a study abroad kind of mindset and experience.
Right. Like I was really happy when I left there, and I realized
Are you still happy?
because the culture like really immersed itself on
Yeah.
me.
Good. All right, Anna, what is something that surprised you either about your country, your program, or your overall experiences?
Okay, so going into it, I was extremely apprehensive and kind of scared about making mistakes, which I realize now is so silly. Especially in this language immersive experience, you're going to make mistakes. Everybody does. But it's just the fact that a lot of the people in Granada specifically not only wanted to help you out and make you become a greater Spanish speaker, but they also wanted to learn from you in return. So it was kind of this symbiotic relationship that I wasn't expecting at all, which turned out to be one of the best parts of this city. So yeah, it was just a really excellent experience to learn from others and then also feel like I had a lot to offer them.
Good. All right, so I know we're getting close to our time mark. So what is one recommendation that you would give for someone who is thinking about studying abroad? I mean, this beyond do it. I think we can all agree that we think that they should do it. Devon, do you want to try and start us off on this one?
The best recommendation I have would always just be to try not to go into it with too many expectations. Like you're going to naturally have a lot of expectations, but if you kind of let the experience guide you and not you guide the experience, I think you'll get a lot more out of it.
Nicely done. Anna, what is one recommendation?
So I think one of the number one turnoffs for people considering studying abroad is how are you going to pay for it? And what they don't realize is that at ISU, there are so many financial resources, whether that be through the study abroad office or departmental scholarships or university-wide scholarships. Everybody wants you to succeed. And so everyone will work together to try and make sure that we can, make this opportunity actually happen. So maybe take a step back, again, ask for help, poke around, and do your research.
Well, and the only thing I would add to that is, like you're saying, ask questions. So do your research, particularly for the study abroad office. We really do. We want the best for you, and we want to find the best fit program. So yeah, come and talk to us. We will bend over backwards to try and find the program that's the best fit for you. All right, Joy, no pressure. But if there's one recommendation that you could give for someone who's thinking about studying abroad, what would it be?
Anna's really hit the nail on the head today. So I just want to say on that if you're thinking about it and you're hesitant, please just ask questions, as you have said. I mean, both of my semesters are cheaper than both of my semesters would have been at ISU, significantly cheaper. But to say something different, I'll say forget about the FOMO. One thing I was worried about, if you're not familiar with FOMO, it's fear of missing out. So I was thinking, what am I going to do? I was committed to this organization. My friends are going to be doing things we always do. What about my family traditions? But I will say that the experiences I have built, the relationships I've built, and the experiences that I've had while I've been abroad are completely different and have been so enjoyable. I would not trade it. I mean, I came home for a break and I'm here okay, let me get back. So if you're worried about missing out, it's going to be okay. Maybe you'll, have your days where you miss home and things like that, but you can lean into your resources, lean into your mentors, FaceTime your family, but don't trade this amazing experience for a few missed memories because you'll make some more.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you all so much. I'll let Linda pop in. I don't know if Linda's going to pop in for question and Q&A time, or if I'm in charge of Q&A time.
It's up to you. If you'd like to read the questions, you're welcome
Oh,
to.
no. You go
All
for it.
right. So we have a question that came in early on, and so you might have addressed, I think a couple of you touched on it, but Dr. Goodman asks, cultural shock happens for even the most experienced travelers. So what's a cultural shock experience that you've encountered, and how did you push through it? Anybody can jump in.
Okay, this one's super niche, but in Spain, they have really, really late dinners. And it was just this fact that I had to throw every routine I knew out the window and readjust to something else was pretty difficult at first. And while, I wouldn't have changed it for the world, it was definitely this, this adjustment period. But what really helped for me is that I had an amazing host family that was willing to, sort of even adjust how they do things a little bit just to get me, ease me in there. And I'm really grateful for them. And I know that just sounds ridiculous, but it was this idea that I'm a very routine oriented person, and that was a hardship for me.
And Anna, what was a typical dinner time there?
Sure. It was usually around 8:39-ish. And I lived with 2 little kids too. And even then they would be up eating dinner with us. It was the most bizarre thing.
All right. Does anyone else? I know, Joy, you talked a little bit about the dish with the intact shrimp, we'll call it, but did you have any other culture shock experiences that stand out to you?
Yes, one of the things that I was baffled by, and I think this is just user error, but in Germany, they do not, they're going to assume that you speak German. And I feel like immediately in the US, I suppose we assume people speak English, but that's just something I wasn't ready for. And there are so many people that do speak English, especially around our age. I think they're taught English already in school. But when I would go to the grocery store, especially if I'm interacting with someone who's older than me, and I ask, sprechen Sie English? Do you speak English? They say no, and they're not flexible on it. And I'm like, okay, how did I fix that? I would say community, whether that's other exchange students or just befriending German students that I could travel around with. We had a buddy program, and then also just learning the terminology. That's why we're there, is to immerse ourselves in the experience. So when I started to learn the words and the phrases that I would frequently use, and how to go into the grocery store, at the pharmacy, and the clothing store. So that was the boost that I needed to really force me to try to learn the language more. So it was a learning curve, but it's been a fun addition to the trip.
That's great. And Devon, did you have any culture shock experiences you wanted to share?
I definitely agree with both of the things that Anna and Joy said. The only thing I would add specifically about Cyprus is they drive on the left side of the road. And also there are just generally kind of not a lot of rules on the road. And they take taxis everywhere. So, I mean, that kind of took a little bit getting used to. I did learn how to use apps to order taxis and get around. And I didn't learn how to look to the left side, but when crossing the street, but I did just start looking everywhere. So I guess that's one thing I learned out.
That's great. All right. This next question might be specifically for Joy, but what are the benefits of getting a degree from both ISU and an international university? And if someone else is getting a dual and I missed it, I apologize.
Oh, well, I don't completely know yet. But what I will say is, before I went on this program, I spent a lot of time talking to Dr. Ribbons. I hope that she wouldn't mind that I'm sharing her name so much, but she's wonderful. So if you're in the College of Business, I would recommend you talk to her. One of the things that she mentioned to me is when you're applying for jobs and you have that dual degree, sometimes people who are hiring will look at that as similar to the way they would an MBA. So the thing is, it already sets you apart that you're studying abroad, but from what I've heard, I don't think it's too common to be getting an extra degree from that institution. So I think whether you're going to grad school or looking for a job, I think that's going to be something that's really impressive on a resume.
All right, thank you. And go ahead,
I would like
Alex.
to give a shout out to Dr. Ribbons. It's the International Business Institute. For students that are on here or campus members, it's the 3rd floor of the College of Business. And so Dr. Ribbons usually has office hours, graduate assistants, and times to be able to come in and ask about study abroad related things.
All right, any other comments on the dual degree before we move on? No. All right. We actually have a question from Dr. Ribbons, and we'll take that next. And Dr. Ribbons, yeah, I know she's watching. Okay. Dr. Barbara Ribbons would like to know, what was your most memorable moment of your study abroad so far?
I have like 2 really simple moments that really kind of culminate a lot of things in one. But one was my apartment was in a very unique location to where like I would wake up every morning and like watch the sunrise, and there were never any clouds in Cyprus. The weather is always perfect. So it was a beautiful sunrise, but also I could see the buffer zone from my apartment. So I could see the Greek side and the Turkish side at the same time. And so like I just had moments every morning where I was like, there's no place else in the entire world where I will get this experience. And then my other one was my last week in Cyprus. I had dinner with a Finnish kid, a student from Finland. His name's Timo, and we were classmates, and we sat there for hours and just talked about family history. I learned a lot from him about European history and like language, but I had so many of those experiences in Cyprus, and like I will remember Timo for the rest of my life. We still keep in contact.
One of my most memorable experiences was on Thanksgiving. So I think we're the only country that celebrates Thanksgiving. And so I remember I'd woken up in the morning and FaceTime my family, who was still in the night before because Germany's 7 hours ahead. And I was kind of thinking, man, this will be my first Thanksgiving away from home. You know, we typically get the whole family together. And later that day, one of my friends, who is actually from Uruguay, sent me a text and was like, hey, isn't today Thanksgiving? And I was like, it is Thanksgiving. So we ended up getting a group of friends together and we made our own dinner. Everyone cooked something that was typical for their country. And we got together and just listened to music and ate dinner. And it was really nice because while I woke up and I was anticipating kind of a little, loneliness, a little homesickness, that was one of the moments where I was most reminded of the community that I have, even when I'm away from home. So that was a really great experience.
All right, I'll go ahead. And for this one, I will focus on my Italy summer. We had one free weekend to do whatever we pleased while we were there. One thing I should preface this, faculty-led trips are usually pretty structured, pretty planned out. They'll like give you an itinerary ahead of time. So consider that before you think about going on one. But we had one free weekend. So my roommate and I, we decided that we would book an Airbnb out in the countryside. And so it was just the most bizarre experience. We ended up meeting our host like in the basement of this co-op in Italy, and he drove us stick shift, because all the cars are stick shifts. So you're like, oh my gosh, through these rugged Italian roads. And it was this farm, so there's chickens all around, and he made us homemade jam for our toast in the morning. Then we went to this town that was literally on the cliffside, and everybody brought one ingredient for pizza. And so the population of this town was 10 people. And all they have is this like communal pizza oven that is the center of town. And so everybody brought one ingredient and we all ate this shared meal together. And it was just this experience where I sat there and I was thinking, is this really happening to me in this moment right now? And so like whenever I'm in, experiencing a dark place, or on the plane ride back from Spain when I'm being kicked out of the country. Like, that's one of my happy moments that I always return to. And I'm really hoping to make some more of those this summer.
That is great. And I'm so sorry we're going to run out of time. We'll do one more question real briefly, and that is, and I know some of you have touched on this, but has your study abroad experience redirected your course of study, your major, or your future? So if there's anything on that that you haven't addressed, we'll do about 1 minute each, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you.
So I can start. I actually, before I went to ISU, I started a music education degree at a different university. And so, like I said, I did a gap year in Germany first. And I was like going over there as a music person, but then like it was in 2015, so it was during the height of the Syrian refugee crisis, and meeting those refugees actually is what made me want to redirect my entire life plan. So Cyprus solidified like that for me, but actually my study abroad and experience in Germany completely changed my life.
Sorry, Joy. I mentioned this briefly before, and I'll just expand on it a little bit. That it was just I was only there for 1 day at this archaeological excavation in Italy, but that has since like snowballed into this incredible interest where I enrolled in as many archaeology classes as ISU offered, and then it led to this excellent field school experience this past summer, and really, again, made me shift where I want to go in my career. And then I'll also briefly touch on Spanish. I had never anticipated using Spanish in a career. It was more just like a hobby, something I really wanted to learn. But having completed my Spanish minor, I can totally see myself implementing that in my future career. Like I mentioned earlier, it just opens these new channels of communication. And that's really important, especially in the field of history.
And I will say that I was interested in international relations before I studied abroad, and I still am. But what this experience has done for me is kind of shift my priorities. So I think before I went into study abroad, I had this idea of this should be like this, and my grades should be this, and my time at ISU should be this length, and then I'll go do this and this and this. I'm very structured and routine. And I get to Germany, and my advisor told me I have 2 classes at the same time, and I can just choose to go to one or go to neither. And I'm like, the concept of time that people have, and I'm friends with a lot of Spanish students. Again, we're eating dinner at 10. So I had to let go of my rigidness. And so I think initially I was like, okay, I'll go to ISU for 4 years and then do this and this. But now, I mean, I want to do the BS MBA program, stay a little longer, maybe do another study abroad in Spain. So sorry. But yes, my priorities are rearranged.
Thank you all so much. I'm sorry that we're out of time. And if there are additional questions, you can send them to internationalseminar@ilstu.edu, and we can forward those to the presenters. Thank you, Alex, for facilitating this. And for anyone who enjoyed this, next week, Alex will facilitate a panel of faculty members who have led faculty study abroad. Thank you to our audience for being here today. It's been delightful to get to hear from all of these students and hear their adventures. And I'm sure everyone's inspired to study abroad, including us. We're proud to continue this series to help inform the Bloomington Normal community and our campus about the impact ISU has across the globe. And again, I want to give a shout out. This is Redbird Philanthropy Week, where we focus on the importance of gifts to the university and how much they make possible here. Tomorrow is Birds Give Back. And if you are interested in supporting international student scholarships, I encourage you to designate a gift for iHouse tomorrow, and those will all go to student scholarships. So thank you again. Stay safe, stay healthy, and go you Redbirds.